Check, 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 check. I'm gonna give you this microphone. Let's. So you just tell me where we're going.
Yeah, no worries. So we're just gonna go straight, and I'm taking a left. So this is Arch Road. So this is all flooded. You would never been able to drive down here. This is Delford. So you can drive down now. You're gonna see architecturally why this would be the worst hit street. As soon as you come in, you're gonna notice it declines. It's an immediate decline. Yeah. The area down here, though, they're hit the worst. The water goes up to the doorknob. So we didn't have enough time.
Welcome to Stories from the Stage, produced by World Channel and WGBH Boston in partnership with MassMouth. Each episode, ordinary people stand up in front of a live studio audience and tell a story based on a theme. I'm Liz Cheng.
And I am Patricia Alvarado Núñez, and we help create Stories from the Stage.
In this episode, we hear from Ashley Rose, a poet, a writer, and a teacher working at Suffolk University's Center for Restorative Justice in Boston.
So Liz, imagine that on a perfectly normal day when you are 11 years old, you witness dark water rising up from your basement to take over your home. And suddenly, your entire neighborhood is flooded.
And then you find out that the flood is just the beginning of your troubles. Ashley Rose takes us back to that day.
I grew up in Rosendale on a dead-end street called Delford. I was born in 1985, so I existed on Rosendale probably for about the first 12 years of my life, and I would say was a bit of a utopia. A lot of people think of America as a melting pot at this time period. No, my street was a tossed salad. We had a little bit of everybody, and everyone brought their own flavor, their own style. I learned about convergent and divergent boundaries from people who escaped these volcanic islands that erupted from Montserrat. I learned about Puerto Rican culture and that Puerto Ricans, some of them were black. I was like, oh my God, this was just all these learning experiences. I was raised by Cambodians. I had a little bit of everything in Rosendale, and it was perfect until a day in 1996. When Boston decided to drown a whole bunch of poor immigrants in Rosendale. On this particular day in 1996, it wasn't raining, it was drizzling, all right? So doing what I always do on Sundays with my brother, I decided that I wanted my bacon, egg, and cheese, and being a little sister, my brother's like, you're gonna go to the store to get the eggs. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever, Josh, I'll do it. So I go get my eggs, but the first thing I realize is, why am I hopping over puddles to get over Washington Street to Four Brothers Market? All right, whatever, let me just get the eggs. I head on home. By the time I get home, I realize the water's starting to pool at the side of the sidewalks a little more. The water's not going down, but it's really not raining. This is kind of weird, but I'm just gonna watch Ghost Rider and keep minding my business, all right? Eventually, we start to hear the water. The dogs start to congregate on the third floor and howl. The cats start to pace. Me being from Rosendale, growing up in Arboretums, I know you trust animals, all right? So I'm like, something's wrong. Eventually, I hear the sound of water. Sounds like it's coming from the basement. Me and my brother, being the investigators that we are, go into the basement and realize that there is brown and black water pouring in from the back of the basement, and it's coming in pretty fast. Eventually, it opens the door, and we can't close the door. So we're like, okay, well, let's just call Mom. Ma's at work. My mom works in Cambridge. Ma, the house is flooding. Ashley, it can't be flooding. I'm in Cambridge. It's not raining. I know, but it's flooding. Within the next hour, there's a firefighter at our door, saying that we have to leave on a raft. This is Rosendale, y'all. This is Rosendale, okay? A raft. Ma, I gotta leave on a raft. All right, I'm just gonna get the cat to the dog and get on a raft. The guy says, you can't bring the cats and the dogs. I said, well, then you know I'm not going. I go on to this whole tangent, Noah's Ark, I'm not leaving. Punky didn't leave Brandon, I'm not doing it. Leave me here, I'm going down with the ship. One of my neighbors come over and said, Ashley, get in this raft. And this was back in the day when your neighbor could still discipline you. So I said, all right, I'm gonna get in a raft and go. I end up at the Rosendale Community Center, at the Archdale Community Center, which is now the Menino Center. And it's pretty fun, because this is where I play basketball every day. I'm like, get there, this group called FEMA passes me a hat, a flashlight, and a car. I'm like, I can play basketball, my mother's not here. This is great. All right, this works till my mother shows up with the cat in the bag, literally. I'm like, yeah, you saved my cat, Ma, you're the best, but you smell like sewage. She looks like, all right, Ash, take the cat, but my mom doesn't look like her normal self. I'm like, maybe it's because she's wet. Once she dries off, she'll be back to normal. I'm like, Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong with the house? She says, everything's underwater. We can't go back to the house. I'm like, well, Mom, we're at the gym, that's fine. She said, but my mom doesn't look normal at this point. I'm starting to get a little more worried, but we have 4 days at this community center. On the 5th day, my friends called FEMA leave. Little did I know they would leave us floating on faith forever. After that, we had to live in cars because the community center had to turn back into a gym eventually. We lived in cars for 2 weeks. Eventually, my mom, being from New York City, having no family, ended up breaking back into the condemned apartments because we realized they flooded us with sewage. So we could no longer live there, but my mom had nowhere to go, so she becomes a squatter. We squat in this apartment illegally for 7 to 8 months until eventually my mom wins a home off of watching TV. Oprah had a show on a special called Habitat for Humanity. Right, clap for Oprah, right? Love Oprah. And I look at her and said, Mom, we should apply for this Habitat for Humanity thing. She's like, Ashley, don't you realize I lose everything? I just lost a house, I lost everything. I said, Mom, I just won the Easter egg raffle. I win everything, all right? So we're both going back and forth. I decided, you know what, Mom, I'm gonna apply. Because my English teacher said that I'm a good writer. The application comes, I apply. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I told you so. We got picked for the Habitat for Humanity house. I'm like, yay, now that's what a clap for Habitat. It spent 1 year, college kids, church missionaries, volunteers, helped me rebuild a house that my mom still owns and lives on Hansborough Street in Dorchester. I get a scholarship to college, my life's put back together. I go back, make sure I help out for Habitat for Humanity when Hurricane Katrina hits, because it's the cycle of giving, but I still hate FEMA. I hate FEMA. I get you. The wrath of revenge and hate that I had for them never left. It actually didn't leave, I would say, until about 2 weeks ago. I end up about to be able to perform at a special event, and I'm happen to go over there like, oh, Ashley, you're a poet. I hear you write a lot about housing rights. And I go into this whole tangent about being displaced and flooded, and this random guy in the audience stands up and says, I'm sorry. I said, you are sorry for interrupting me like that, guy. Like, what are you doing? He goes, no, ma'am, I was on that team 20 years ago from FEMA.
We'll see what happens next in a minute. So, Patricia, here's what happened. In 1996, the outdated sewage system servicing Roslindale, Massachusetts, failed and dumped millions of gallons of sewage into Ashley Rose's neighborhood, damaging hundreds of homes and businesses.
So it was human error, not Mother Nature. Maybe that's why it was so unexpected. And it happened to a neighborhood particularly unable to rebuild and recover.
In 2005, after 9 long years, the Archdale-Roslindale Coalition, representing 209 families, won more than $4 million for sewage improvements and $6 million in restitution from the state and city sewage agencies.
But this victory wasn't enough to help Ashley heal. Instead, that came randomly when she met the former Region 1 director for FEMA 23 years after the flood.
First, it was shocking for me to be sitting there not pre-planning this meeting. It was just real weird. At first, I thought he was actually playing. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was somebody who's just, hey, I knew about this, just to have something to say at the table. But to bring the truth in, him to stop saying, nah, this was Delford. He was like, y'all were the worst hit. This was Maria before Maria. And within that it was anger, it was happiness, it was empathy, it was, and I see it now, it was the essence of restorative justice. Like, you know, because afterwards I gave him a hug. Like, we exchanged information. He offered to, like, if you want to go help rebuild in Puerto Rico, how can I be of service to you now? To me, that meant more. His words that day were enough, but he actually tried to back them up with actions. And if you would have asked me prior what an apology had done anything for me, I would have told you, no, you pay this, do that, do this. But like when I actually sat there and received it unexpectedly with such grace that this man delivered it, it was priceless. It was worth everything. I feel like the reason why I'm sitting here with you now, and it's not like a sad feeling that I'm feeling right now. Rather, it's like a hopeful feeling for others who your ending might not be in 5 days. Your ending might be 23 years later.
Wow, sometimes the future can unfold in completely unexpected ways.
And there was another unexpected outcome. The flood forced Ashley into the community center right across the street from her old apartment, and that opened up a whole new world for her.
When I got to the community center, it's the worst and the best. Like, I went there because I had no place to really go, and the lady was kind of nice to me since the flood happened. But it became a place where I started to make friends in the projects. And the projects became everything. I was like, oh my God, they have a whole community in here. I can always remember a friend, I don't know where Vivian Cologne is right now, but Vivian Cologne making pots of rice for me every day. So she did Thanksgiving with me, Christmas, because she knew that little girl's by herself. There was a guy named Chris Mock who was my mom's coworker at work, and he knew because he drove cabs what happened. So he would drop off food, I would say, for 2 years. This man's single by himself. I don't know where Chris Mock is, but he's a Haitian cab driver. He dropped off food every day. Every day. And my mom would refuse the food because she doesn't like handouts. He would make sure he showed up an hour before she came home because he knew we didn't have a fridge. So it was like we always needed the extra food, you know? So I think my friends group turned into family. My friends that I call friends till this day are all met at that place in the projects that was after the harm. But that was because they literally embraced me. I mean, their mothers, like, strategically, this was intentional, embraced me. Because things happen. It's how you react to things that happen. What do you do? What are you going to do as an individual to help somebody? I don't think these would have been stories that would have been heard, but I believe that it's like those unsung heroes. Like, it's those key people, like, they're all there. It's the people who help people.
Ashley experienced acts of surprising humanity.
And it makes you wonder how all of that influenced her life.
If I was to think about my life now and just how this all impacted all, at the beginning, there was no hope. I felt like I was cursed when I was younger. Like, there just could not have been worse statistics. Like, my dad's killed when I'm very young. Like, my mom's single. We don't speak the language. We're poor. And you lose a house and you lose a flood. And that's all this stuff. But in the end, when I'm thinking about it, it all was for every single one of those moments served a purpose. I gained a strength or a skill that now allows me to sit with kids who were once me, but also sit with folk who are nothing like me to open up their hearts in ways that they can help each other. I've seen real lawyers sitting in halls with people in projects with 17 languages going on at once and them fight for 10 years, organized for the Archdale-Rosendale Coalition to sue the city for millions, not because they wanted money, but because it was what's needed to heal. That's activism. It sometimes is the worst event that acts as a point of urgency. And when I look at my life right now, sitting at the Center for Restorative Justice, I mean, had you not asked me the question, I don't think I would probably have this grin on my face, right? It makes sense. I realized it was probably an initiation in ways, spiritually. Like, some people your initiation might start early, but then it becomes a point where it will all make sense, where the lessons that you were forced to carry are the burdens end up becoming wings, you fly with them. So the residue of the flood is no longer residue. It's more like fertilizer, I always tell you, the flowers didn't grow back in Rosendale the same way after the flood. But I think certain other things blossomed,
Ashley Rose is a poet, writer, and teacher.
You can hear and see more stories at worldchannel.org.
I'm Liz Cheng.
And I am Patricia Alvarado Núñez. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, you can turn right here. So this is the community center. So I lived here prior to the community center being built, which is why I didn't like it at first. I used to hang in the Arboretum. I'm like, I'm not going in here with these stupid people. But eventually I realized this is where I want to be. Yeah, you can park right here. Yeah, that's fine. So I gotta say hi to Miss Charlene. I'm sorry, because my mom will be saying I'm being disrespectful. I'm sorry, I am on tape. Hey, Miss Charlene. So she might be able to tell you about the flood too, because they were all here. You better go.
No, Bob, when the rowboats was going down.
These were boats.
The rowboats.
They took us out on boats.
That's the only way you can get through here is on rowboats. Seriously. but the water was up so high, it was rowboats.
So you'll get
Even the mayor had to come through on a rowboat.